The valley burned red beneath the dying sun. A lone rider cut through the haze, his silhouette long and sharp against the dust. His coat was torn from miles of wind, his hat shadowing eyes that hadn't known peace in years. The creak of leather, the steady rhythm of hooves, and the low groan of the horizon, it was all that followed him as he made his way home. He hadn't planned on staying away this long. The war had taken what it wanted from him, friends, innocence, time, and left him hollow. But tonight, for the first time in months, the thought of warmth pulled stronger than the ache in his bones. Beyond the ridge, the prairie softened, and there it was, a small homestead crouched against the slope, its windows glowing gold in the falling dusk. The chimney's thin line of smoke coiled into the rose-colored sky. A dog barked as he neared the fence. The door opened, and a woman stepped out, her figure framed in lamplight, the sound of her voice reaching before her words did, a melody that broke the silence in him like spring thaw breaking river ice. He dismounted slowly, the stiffness in his body betraying the years of dust and violence he carried. She met him halfway, eyes bright and wet. He let his hand rest on her cheek for a breath, long enough to feel the life there, the warmth he'd almost forgotten. Their boy stumbled from the doorway next barefoot, a stick in his hand pretending to be a rifle. The rider crouched and scooped him up, laughing softly, a sound rare and uncertain. The boy pressed his small hand against his father's scarred jaw. "You're home," he said, like he needed to make it true. That night the air turned cold, and the wind whispered through the cottonwoods. Inside, the fire burned low, the light flickering against walls marked by years of hard living. The man sat at the table cleaning his revolver, the steel reflecting orange from the flames. His wife watched him from across the room, her sewing resting in her lap. "You think they'll come this far out?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were sharp with worry. He paused. "If the rumors are right, the Black Spur gang's been hitting ranches from here to Copper Ridge. They'll come as far as they please. And the law—" He gave a small, humorless smile. "The law's been bought, same as everything else in this country." She looked away, the fire painting her face in amber and shadow. "Then what keeps us safe?" He holstered the revolver. "Me." Outside, the night deepened. Coyotes called in the distance, their cries cutting to the dark like splinters of glass. He went out to the porch with his rifle slung across his knees, watching the horizon. A storm was forming, black clouds crawling low, smothering the stars. He thought of the war again, of the smell of burning cotton, and the sound of men dying for causes they barely remembered. He thought of how peace never truly followed him home. Out here, it only wore a different face. By dawn, the world was pale and still. A thin fog clung to ground, and the wind carried the smell of rain. The boy was feeding the chickens, humming off-key. His mother was at the stove, stirring coffee. The man saddled his horse to check the fence line, but something in the stillness kept his hand close to his gun. He spotted the first rider cresting the hill, a dark figure, slow, deliberate. Then another, and another. Within moments, the valley filled with shapes moving through the fog. There was no mistaking them. The Black Spur gang. He counted at least 10, maybe more. He turned the horse back toward the house, shouting for them to get inside. His wife appeared at the door, eyes wide, clutching their son. The riders fanned out like wolves, their leader at the center, tall, with a long coat and a black hat pulled low. The man's voice carried clear across the yard. "Morning, neighbor," the leader called. "Fine place you've got. Shame it's sitting on what ain't yours." "This land's paid for," the cowboy said, rifle raised. The leader smiled, teeth white against the dark. "Maybe, but I ain't talking about land. I'm talking about blood." Then the shooting started. The first shot cracked through the morning, sharp as lightning. Windows shattered. The dog howled and fell. The man fired back, hitting one of the riders clean off his horse. The others moved fast, spreading wide, circling. His wife dragged their boy toward the cellar, screaming for him to come inside. But he couldn't. He was already caught in the rhythm. Reload, fire, duck, breathe. Smoke filled the yard. The barn caught first, flames curling up the dry wood. He ran for the porch but felt the burn of a bullet tear through his shoulder. He stumbled, the rifle slipping for his grasp. His vision blurred, but through the haze he saw them. Two men dragged his wife from the doorway, another holding the boy back by the collar. He screamed, tried to rise, but the world tilted. He reached for the revolver at his hip, but a boot came down on his wrist. The leader crouched before him, eyes pale and empty. "You took something from me once," the man said quietly. "A life I wanted, so I took yours." The gun flashed. The woman's cry broke the air, then stopped. The boy's voice followed, small and sharp, cut off too soon. Smoke choked the wind. The leader stood, holstered his weapon, and lit a cigar with a splinter from the burning porch. He looked down at the cowboy, bleeding in the dust. "Devil's Valley remembers its debts," he said, and walked away. The world dimmed to smoke and flame. Time lost meaning. When the rain came, it hissed against the ruins like the earth trying to wash away sin. By the time he could move again, the fire was only embers. The rain had turned the soil to mud, black and thick. He found them together near the edge of the field. He buried them beneath the twisted juniper, the only tree left standing. No preacher, no words, just his hands and the sound of the wind. When it was done, he sat in the mud until dawn, soaked and silent. He pulled the ring from his finger and laid it on the grave. The ground seemed to breathe beneath him, as if the valley itself were listening. He whispered, "I'll see you when the valley runs red." Then he rose, slow and stiff, and walked to the stable where his second horse waited trembling. He packed what little remained, his revolver, a handful of cartridges, a worn photograph. He didn't look back when he mounted. The storm was moving east, and he rode straight into it, the wind tearing at his coat. By the time the sun rose, he was nothing but a shadow swallowed by the horizon. The house burned behind him, black smoke rising into the pale sky, and Devil's Valley waited, patient, hungry, endless. The road into Devil's Valley was no more than a scar across the prairie, lined with skeletal trees that bent in the wind, as if whispering warnings. The cowboy rode in silence, each hoofbeat echoing against the empty hills. The rain from the previous night had turned the dirt into a thick, sucking mud that pulled at his boots and the hooves of his horse. He ignored the discomfort. The only thing that mattered was the trail ahead. Somewhere in this valley, the Black Spur gang had made their lair, and he would follow them to the ends of the earth if he had to. By mid-morning, he came upon a town that had seen better days. The wooden planks of the boardwalk sagged. Windows were shuttered or cracked, and a saloon door swung loosely on its hinges. The smell of stale whiskey and smoke hung heavy in the air. A single man sat on the steps of the general store, hunched over a bottle. His eyes lifted briefly as the cowboy approached, wary, calculating. "You looking for trouble?" the man asked, voice raspy. "Information," the cowboy replied, dismounting. He tied his horse to a post, careful to keep one hand near his revolver. "About the Black Spur gang. Heard anything?" The man laughed bitterly, swigged from his bottle. "Heard? Hell, they passed through here last week. Took what they wanted, burned what they couldn't carry. Don't need hearsay. Just ask anyone still breathing." The cowboy's hand tightened on the reins. "Names, where they're headed." The man hesitated, then spat to the side. "Old copper mine, North Ridge. That's as close as anyone gets without getting themselves killed." The cowboy studied him, then nodded. He left a few coins on the steps. Not enough to pay for kindness, but enough to buy silence. As he mounted, the man called after him, "Ain't no man comes out of Devil's Valley hole." The words echoed in the cowboy's mind long after the town disappeared behind a bend. He had no illusions. The valley was a place of devils, and he was walking straight into the mouth of one. But the memory of his wife's laugh, the feel of his son's small hand in his own, was sharper than fear. It carried him forward. He traveled for hours, moving through abandoned homesteads and dry riverbeds where the sun glared down like a punishment. The wind carried whispers, rustling dead grass and broken fences. He saw ghosts of lives once lived, swinging doors, empty cradles, and burnt barns where the smoke still clung to the rafters. Each ruin was a reminder what the Black Spur gang could take, and each step deepened his resolve. Late in the afternoon, he encountered a chapel perched on a ridge, charred and crumbling. Inside, A man knelt among the ashes, whispering prayers over a blackened pulpit. He wore the robes of a preacher, though they were tattered, singed at the edges. "You look like a man carrying more than he can hold," the preacher said without turning, voice low and steady. "I am," the cowboy admitted. "I'm looking for the ones who killed my family." The preacher rose slowly, eyes clouded with sorrow. "Revenge don't bring light, son. It just digs you closer to hell." The cowboy's gaze hardened. "Then hell's where I'm headed." The preacher offered him a worn Bible, pages frayed and some missing entirely. Might need something to read when the devils stopped talking. He accepted it, not out of faith, but as a talisman, a reminder that the world still held fragments of order amidst the chaos. He left the chapel before nightfall, the sky darkening in shades of violet and iron. The wind carried the smell of rain from the north, and he pressed on, boots slipping in the mud, heart set like stone. That night, he made camp in the hollow of a dead oak, the fog rolling in thick and cold. He fed his horse, cleaned his revolver, and listened to the sounds of the valley. Coyotes calling, the distant snap of a branch, the wind rattling through the hollowed trees. Sleep was shallow, dreams punctuated by flashes of fire and screams, the faces of his wife and son blurred and burning in the shadows. When dawn came, pale and silent, he found tracks leading into a narrow canyon. He followed them carefully, noting the impressions of boots and horses, the broken branches where the gang had passed. Hours later, he spotted a figure hiding in the shadows of a crumbling outpost. A man, thin, wiry, and trembling, clutching a rifle that had seen better days. The cowboy approached silently, eyes fixed, breath measured. "Slim Buckner?" he asked. The man froze and stammered. I don't. You know my family." The cowboy said softly, the words carrying more weight than any gunshot. "You know what they did." Slim's face paled. "I didn't." The cowboy didn't wait for excuses. The world had taught him mercy was a luxury he could no longer afford. He fired once, precise and unflinching. The man collapsed, blood dark on the rocks. Smoke and fog mingled around them, curling like the remnants of memory. He knelt beside the body, dragging a hand across Slim's charred hat, then set it aflame. The fire hissed against the damp air, a dark prayer rising into the pale morning sky. There was no satisfaction, only emptiness. His heartbeat echoed in his ears, heavy and relentless. Pressing onward, he encountered a lone traveler at the edge of a dry creek. Leaning against a rock, rifle slung across his back. The man's eyes were wary but honest. "You're chasing Cade," the traveler said. "The gang's been talking. He's not like the others. Killed them himself, says it's for sport." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "Then I'll make sure he answers for it." The traveler nodded, tipping his hat. "Be careful. That valley doesn't just kill bodies. It eats souls." He left the man behind, the words lingering like smoke in his mind. He pressed into the canyon, the walls rising high, closing the sky to a narrow slit. Every footstep was a drumbeat in a march he had no intention of halting. His shoulders still throbbed from the long ride, but pain was a companion he had learned to ignore. The canyon opened into a flat expanse where the remains of an old mining town lay scattered, rusted wagons and collapsed cabins swallowed by sand and dust. He moved carefully, scanning for signs, the wind carrying faint shouts and the metallic tang of gunpowder. Somewhere in this desolate place, the gang's leader waited, confident in the valley's silence. Night fell slowly, painting the ruins in hues of gray and gold. He made camp behind a fallen wall, rifle across his knees, eyes sweeping the darkness. Flames from a distant fire flickered in the distance. Perhaps a sentry, perhaps nothing. Either way, he would be ready. As he stared into the dying embers of his own small fire, he thought of his family again, the warmth of a life ripped from him, and the path that had led him here. There was no turning back. The valley had claimed his past. The future would be carved from vengeance. And as the wind whispered through the hollow shells of buildings and broken fences, he felt the weight of the coming storm. The Black Spur gang was out there, waiting, and he would find them, one by one. By dawn, he was already moving again, leaving only footprints in the faint smoke of his fire behind him. Every step brought him closer to the heart of the valley, close to the man who had taken everything from him. The air was sharp with anticipation, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Devil's Valley stretched ahead, endless and unforgiving, and he rode straight into it. The valley narrowed, cliffs rising like jagged teeth on either side of the trail. The cowboy moved to the shadow of red rock, every step deliberate, every breath measured. The air was thick with the scent of dust and iron, the wind carrying whispers of old violence. He knew he was close. The Black Spur gang had left traces, boot prints in mud, broken twigs, a spent cartridge glinting in the sun like a warning. He crouched behind a boulder, scanning the ridge above. 2 sentries patrolled lazily, unaware of the storm creeping toward them in the form of man who had nothing left to lose. He observed their rhythm, their blind spots, the way the light caught the edges of their weapons. He moved slowly, silent as shadow, closing the distance. The first sentry fell without a sound, a flash of steel cutting through the tense air. The second went down moments later, eyes wide in surprise, a shallow scream swallowed by the canyon. Mud and blood mingled at his knees as he paused, listening for movement, counting heartbeats. The rest of the gang would be close. He had to act with precision or die trying. Through the smoke of the morning, a lone figure appeared. A man leaning against a wooden post, rifle held loosely. Eli, one of the gang, and one who might tell him what he needed to know. The cowboy approached slowly, eyes locked on Eli's face. "They said you'd come," Eli whispered, voice trembling, fingers gripping the barrel of the gun like a lifeline. I didn't pull the trigger, I swear." The cowboy's gaze hardened. "Then tell me who did." Eli swallowed, nodding, sweat streaking dirt across his face. "Cade, he killed him himself. Said it was personal. Said he wanted you to see." The cowboy's hands tightened on his revolver, knuckles white, but he did not fire. Eli's eyes pleaded, and in that moment, he saw the reflection of his own pain mirrored in another man's fear. "Where?" he asked, voice low and steady. Eli gave directions, pointing toward the heart of the valley. "The mine north ridge. You won't find mercy there." Before the cowboy could respond, a shot rang out. Eli fell backward, a crimson bloom spreading across his chest. The cowboy cursed, firing twice in return, but the echo of the shot left a hollow ache in his chest. Death had come early, as it always did here, and he had learned not to flinch. The storm that had been brewing broke suddenly, rain hammering the canyon like fists on stone. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the wreckage of the old mining town far below. His horse slipped in the mud, and he forced it onward, half crawling, half riding, shoulder burning, vision blurred by rain and sweat. Each step forward was a battle with gravity, blood, and the memory of his family. The wind howled, carrying echoes of screams long past, merging with the present in a cadence that made the heart tremble. He reached the edge of the camp as night fell, the remnants of the gang huddled around a fire. The flames licked the sky, throwing their shadows across broken wagons and shattered cabins. He watched them, waiting, calculating. 3 men remained, foot soldiers, expendable and reckless. His hands were steady, his eyes narrow as he picked his moment. A flash of movement. The first went down before he could scream. Another, firing blindly, caught a bullet mid-aim. The third lunged, knife glinting in the firelight. The cowboy met him with a short, brutal sweep of his revolver. The man crumpled, fire reflecting off the steel of his gun as it fell. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant rumble of thunder. And then Cade stepped in the firelight, tall and deliberate, black coat plastered to his body from the rain. His hat shadowed his eyes, but the smirk on his face was unmistakable. "Did it make you feel like a man again?" he asked, voice calm and taunting. The cowboy's jaw clenched. "Not yet." Cade's hands rested lightly on his own revolvers, as if testing the weight of a promise he had carried too long. The rain pelted their faces, washing grime and blood into rivulets that ran down skin and steel alike. Lightning illuminated the tension, a stark frame of predator and prey poised on the edge of violence. "You've been walking through my valley like you owned it," Cade said. "And now you're here, standing in my fire. Funny thing about devils, sometimes they bite harder than they bark." The cowboy didn't respond. He let the silence stretch, letting Cade feel the weight of every life he had taken, every home burned, every scream he had inflicted. The firelight cast a cowboy's shadow long and thin across the mud, a figure forged by grief and unyielding resolve. Cade circled slowly, eyes flicking to the empty shells at their feet. "You're strong," he said. "I'll give you that. But it takes more than strength to survive in Devil's Valley." "I'm not looking to survive," the cowboy replied. "I'm looking to finish what you started." The storm raged around them, wind tearing at their coats, rain hammering the earth like the drums of war. The cowboy followed Cade to the ruins, boots slipping in mud and blood, heart hammering with the rhythm of impending confrontation. He could feel Cade's confidence, the calm of a man who had faced death before and found it convenient. But this time, the hunter had become the hunted. They broke through the last of the wreckage into a narrow gulch, lightning painting the walls in brief, blinding silver. Cade raised his guns, eyes glinting with the reflection of the flames. The cowboy mirrored him, revolvers drawn, muscles coiled, waiting. Shots rang, each one precise and deliberate. The taste of gunpowder filled the air, mingling with the metallic tang of rain-soaked earth. Cade fired, grazing the cowboy's arm, and a sharp ache shot through his body. He gritted his teeth and returned fire, catching Cade in the shoulder. The man stumbled, but his smirk never faded. "You think this ends here?" Cade taunted, stepping closer, rain washing the blood down his chest. "No," the cowboy said. "It ends when the valley knows who it belongs to." They circled, each movement measured, every blink a calculation. Around them, the valley waited, silent and patient, cliffs towering like sentinels over the storm-swept ground. The fight was no longer just about vengeance. It was about who would emerge in the valley whole, and who would become another ghost whispered through the canyons. Cade suddenly bolted toward a crumbling mine entrance, rain-slick rocks threatening to betray him. The cowboy followed, limping, shoulder-burning, but relentless. Mud and water soaked through his clothes. Each step a battle, each breath a reminder of the stakes. He could hear Cade ahead, taunting, daring him to falter. But falter was not in his nature. The gulch opened into a clearing, lightning flashing against the skeletal remains of mining equipment. Cade paused, guns leveled, shadows dancing across his face. The cowboys stepped into the light, revolvers ready, hearts steady despite the ache, despite the blood, despite the storm. "You can't hide in the dark forever," the cowboy said. Cade's grin widened. "I don't hide. I wait." The wind tore across the valley, carrying the scent of mud, smoke, and iron. The storm's fury mirrored the fury in the cowboy's heart. Every scar, every wound, every loss had led him here, to this moment on the edge of the valley, where the final reckoning would either claim him or the man who had taken everything he loved. Lightning flashed once more, illuminating their faces, hunter and hunted, bound by the blood of a valley that had seen too much. The mine at the heart of Devil's Valley yawned like a wound in the earth, jagged edges swallowing the dim light. The cowboy approached cautiously, mud and rain caking his boots, revolvers in hand, every step measured. The storm had passed, leaving the valley slick and gleaming under a pale, trembling sunrise. Lightning lingered in memory, the scent of wet iron hanging heavy in the air. Cade was inside somewhere, waiting, and the cowboy could feel the weight of all he had lost pressing down like the walls of the mine itself. He entered the tunnels, the air thick with dust and the stench of decay. Every step echoed off the rock, a hollow drum that spoke of death and echoes long past. Broken timbers jutted at sharp angles, and rusted machinery lay scattered, silent witnesses to the violence that had taken place here. Shadows shifted, dancing across the walls as his torch flickered, revealing fleeting glimpses of shapes, bones, splintered carts, the ghosts of miners who had long been claimed by the valley. A voice carried from deeper within, smooth and cold. "You came." Cade stepped from the darkness, his silhouette framed by the faint glow of firelight from lanterns further down the shaft. His coat was plastered to his body, hat pulled low, eyes glinting with amusement. "I wonder if you would make it this far." The cowboy's lips pressed into a thin line. "I told you, Cade. This ends today." Cade laughed softly, a sound like dry leaves skittering over stone. "Ends today? Maybe. But the valley isn't kind to men who carry vengeance in their pockets. It likes to chew them up first. No reply came. The cowboy advanced, feet steady despite the sharp pain in his shoulder. Each breath deliberate. He had been walking toward this moment since the first morning he returned to his homestead. The smoke of burning was still fresh in his memory. Cade moved with him through the shadows, circling, testing, watching, but the cowboy's resolve was carved in steel and grief. Then Cade fired. The shot rang against stone, ricocheting harmlessly past him, but the crack was enough to set his blood boiling. He returned fire in kind, and the echo was deafening, reverberating to the tunnels like the roar of the valley itself. Dust and small stones rained down from the ceiling. Both men moved with practiced precision, their gunplay a grim ballet of survival and hatred. Cade lunged forward, using the chaos of the shadows to his advantage. The cowboy ducked, the steel of the revolver catching the dim light, firing in a controlled rhythm. Cade flinched, staggered, but smiled as if pain was part of the game. Each shot, each dodge, each heartbeat carried the weight of every life taken. Every scream left unanswered. The air was thick with gunpowder, wet earth, and the copper tang of blood. Finally, they emerged into a chamber open to the sky, a collapsed section of the mine where sunlight struck wet rock, glinting off puddles of rainwater and blood. Cade paused, breathing heavily, revolvers still ready. "You think this kills me?" he said, voice strained. "You've been walking through my valley like a fool with a promise, but it won't end the way you want." The cowboys stepped forward, arms steady, revolvers trained on the man who had stolen everything from him. "It's not about how it ends for me," he said. "It's about how it ends for you." Cade's smirk faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing his eyes. He fired again, grazing the cowboy's leg, sending a jolt of pain up through his body. The cowboy did not hesitate. He squeezed the trigger, the report ringing sharp, echoing against the rock walls, and Cade stumbled, a crimson bloom spreading across his chest. The world seemed to pause. Cade fell against the jagged rocks, blood mingling with the mud and rain. His smirk dissolved into a grimace, eyes meeting the cowboy's one final time. "You think this makes it right?" The cowboy's voice was low, steady, as rain washed over both men. "No, just quiet." Cade's body went still. The storm had passed, leaving the valley eerily silent except for the drip of water from broken timbers and the wind rattling through the collapsed shaft. The cowboy lowered his revolvers, shoulders heaving, every muscle taut from exertion, from fear, from grief. He took a step back and exhaled, feeling the weight of the past months finally pressing down in a tangible release. He opened the preacher's Bible, soaked from the rain, and a note fluttered out from between the frayed pages. "The valley don't belong to devils forever." He held a moment, letting the words settle, then placed the Bible gently on Cade's chest, an offering to the ghosts of the lives lost. He emerged from the mine, mud and blood streaked across his face, body aching with every step. The sun broke fully over the horizon, casting the valley in harsh, honest light. The devastation was complete, yet something about the world felt quieter, as if the valley itself had exhaled. Smoke from the destroyed mine still rose in thin streams, carrying the scent of fire and iron into the early morning. The cowboy made his way to the gravesite of his family. The juniper tree stood twisted but proud, the only sentinel of a past that refused to fade. He knelt, running a hand over the dirt, over the small crosses he had carved months ago. He placed Cade's revolver across the grave, the steel cold in his hands, a final symbol of reckoning and closure. "It's done," he whispered. "You can rest now." The valley remained still, as if acknowledging the end of one story and the beginning of another. He mounted a fresh horse, muscles stiff from the long night in the fight, and rode toward the horizon. The wind carried the scent of rain, of iron, of earth renewed. Behind him, Devil's Valley stretched wide, endless and formidable, but finally quiet, a place where the echoes of his vengeance had left their mark. As he rode, he thought of what he had lost, what he had survived, and what he had become, a man shaped by grief, hardened by fire, yet capable of moving forward. He did not look back. The sun climbed higher, painting the cliffs in gold and shadow, a reminder that even in a valley of devils, light could find a way. Every step of the horse carried him farther from the ruins and closer to life reclaimed from the ashes. And though the valley still held its secrets, its devils, its memories, he felt a quiet resolution in his chest. The storm had passed, the devils had been met, and the horizon stretched wide with possibility. The cowboy rode on, alone but unbroken, the wind whistling to the canyons, carried with it the names of the lost, the silence of vengeance fulfilled, and the faintest promise of peace. Devil's Valley would remember him, as all valleys remember those who walk through them with fire in their hearts. But he had survived, and that was enough. And somewhere in the distance, the valley waited for the next story, knowing that the echoes of the day would linger long after he was gone.